Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday and welcome back to Norse Studies. This week I am reviewing the channel Norse Magic and Beliefs. This is a channel that has been part of my spiritual journey, although I have to admit I have some mixed feelings about it. The host always has plenty of sources to share, which is very good. He presents the information very logically and succinctly, which I greatly appreciate. So you would think that I would absolutely rank him amongst my favorites. But if I'm being honest, watching his videos can be quite an exasperating experience. Sometimes I come away with the idea that anything or any kind of practice that isn't a direct reflection and copy of what we know of the pagan past is fake in his estimation, LARPing and all of the other bad things. Now, I don't want to misrepresent him. Others who watch him may very well disagree with my assessment. So, all of this is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. And of course, check out his content and form your own impressions of him and what he has to say. The reason why I want to talk about this at all is because there is friction within the pagan community about reconstruction versus allowing for modern pagan evolution. And the Reconstructionist approach, while it has been absolutely invaluable towards gaining a better understanding of the pagan historical past, it still falls short of making the case for how to apply pagan principles in the present, what to do when we just don't know what was. And it absolutely fails to take into account the amount of history that's taken place between the pre Christian era until now. That history doesn't cease to exist when we become pagan, and we can't just pick up exactly where our ancestors left off. We're not the same people. We're not living in the same society, particularly for those of us who live in countries that are far away from our pagan ancestral roots. And this is one of the big flaws in the Reconstructionist model. Now, that doesn't mean that I am deaf to the criticisms that come from Reconstructionists, namely, that it's difficult to be sure whether modern pagan evolution is retaining rather the core message and the spirit of ancient paganism. Uh, and certainly there's a need to put ideas to the test to really make sure about what we're doing and to make sure that we are on solid ground. That's very fair. It's not unreasonable at all. But the trouble with the channel Norse Magic and Beliefs is that the host consistently fails to ask the right question. And that question, in my opinion, is, do the gods accept modern pagan practice? As a matter of fact, he's had a few videos in which it's quite easy to get the impression that he has little to no interest in the gods at all. Now, granted, he does emphasize the need to show honor to the local land spirits and focusing your efforts upon them, but still, his attitude about what matters and what doesn't, and on what basis, it can be a trifle off putting at times. Now, the reason why I primarily consider the question of what do the gods think and whether or not we have any kind of signs of their acceptance is because of, well, the gods' position in the totem pole, if you will. Now, it's true that the gods don't lord it over us, but they are gods. And if anyone is going to object to our practices or the ideas in our heads or how we express those ideas, it would be the gods who would have the right to make those objections or to make their disfavor known. And while tradition is admittedly important, I mean, after all, I regularly advocate for establishing traditions. And certainly we know that tradition was important to our pagan ancestors. I have grave doubts that pagan worship remained exactly the same in thought and practice throughout every single era of the pre Christian times. If nothing at all about the worship changed or how they lived changed, that would imply that, nothing had really major change for them. There had been no natural disasters in all that time, highly unlikely. There hadn't been any tribal wars, no epidemics that, would shake up the landscape or that it caused people to have a need to adapt. And I just don't see how anyone could argue that as being possible. Life is not stagnant, and all of our experiences impact our spirituality, especially if we are living in a community that is rather homogenous when it comes to spiritual ideas. I mean, just things are not going to remain exactly the same. That's just not how reality works. So, is it reasonable to think that the gods or the land spirits or our ancestors just reject their human kin whenever people responded and make adjustments based on what's happening in their environment in their lives? For me, the idea that they would, it just doesn't pass the smell test. And again, I don't want to misrepresent Norse magic and beliefs as being more inflexible as what he really is. Form his own opinion after viewing his content. But for me, his personal take on the religion makes his content of more limited value. Sometimes his list of sources has helped point me in the right direction, and he has given me things to think about. But his assessment of historical fact and his assessment of modern practice, it very rarely persuades me or inspires me to ultimately reconsider my own views. So I think that's all that can be said about Norse magic and beliefs. Next week, I'll be talking about honoring Bragi because I felt the need to do this at this particular time of year. So I hope you'll be back for that. In the meantime, share your thoughts with me in the comments section or come see me and the rest of the gang at Blackbird's Brew on Gilded. There's a link in the description box to join us there if you would care to, and we would be very welcome. But that will do it for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.